What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Steve.
I'm Lindsay.
Today we're going to be checking out paid leave in the US versus the world. This is a topic that Lindsay specifically has been wanting to do for quite some time now. As most of you probably know, we have a 6-year-old daughter, and so we have gone through the experience of wanting to make sure that we could spend an extended amount of time with her after she was born. And luckily, we had the ability to do that. You know, we both worked from home at the time.
We were
and
very blessed.
Very blessed in that way. But we understand that so many people here in the U.S. that become new parents didn't have that ability.
Especially moms.
Yes.
I mean, it's important for dads too, obviously.
Right.
But moms, like, I just can't imagine. Like, there are so many moms who have to send their baby to daycare at a few months old, a month old.
I can't even imagine.
Oh, I literally, I don't think I could do it. I don't think I could.
I remember we talked about that before. There was no way.
I would have to start an OnlyFans or something because I'm not kidding. Like, I just couldn't.
Yeah, I couldn't. I couldn't imagine that. And it's just one of those things that I feel like in modern society, we should absolutely prioritize.
Yeah.
Parents, specifically mothers for the most part, being able to spend at minimum, that first 3 months with their child. I mean, because that is such an important bonding experience there.
Yeah.
But guys, before we get started, just want to say, no, I am not wearing lipstick.
If we look tired and rough and worn
Oh my
out,
goodness.
we played in the snow all day today.
Literally all day long. And although I had a jacket and everything, I didn't have anything cover my face, and she didn't either.
Yeah,
and so
we're
we
wind-burnt.
are wind burnt. I am chapped up.
But no regrets. It was fun.
No, that was a ton of fun. We have gotten quite a bit of snow. We're getting snow overnight again, and we're going to get more snow tomorrow. And then I think later on in the week, we're going to get more snow. So, yeah, should be fun.
We're excited.
Yeah. But guys, enough rambling from us. Let's jump in here and check out what's going on with paid leave in the U.S. versus everyone else.
So, you live here and you're having a baby. Congratulations! Here's some more good news. If you're employed, there's a good chance you'll get paid time off to take care of your new bundle of joy. And you'll probably get to go back to your old job when that leave is over. 95.6% of Earth's population lives in countries where at least one parent gets this time. So your odds are looking pretty good. But if you're part of the other 4.4%,
Are you serious?
you might get time off, but it almost certainly
Not paid.
won't be paid. That's if you live on this small island,
Papua New
any
Guinea.
of these tiny islands, or in this gigantic economic powerhouse
Are you
whose 2020
serious?
GDP was $6 trillion more than second place China.
Oh,
Okay, wait.
hey.
What? What?
Are we literally one of the only, other than here and these islands right
Are
here?
Are they saying not that you can't necessarily get
No,
paid maternity
obviously
leave,
some people do.
but just as a whole, you're not guaranteed it.
Yeah, but
Whereas everywhere else you are.
dude, that is insane. Is that seriously true everywhere else?
It should be the case, but dang.
Like we again.
Yeah, I feel like unless you have a really good job here, you're not going to get paid maternity leave.
Yeah, and obviously
Or paternal leave.
if you're self-employed, you can obviously take the time off, but you may not be getting paid
Unless
because
you've done a bunch of extra work ahead of time.
right. You're
Yeah.
not you gotta but that is wild. Okay, like I did not know the U.S. stood completely alone in this regard.
I didn't either.
I
Wow.
assume
Well,
there would be
not
other
completely
places.
alone. There's some tiny islands that are also with us. in this
Wow,
regard, but
that right there is a shocker.
that's an embarrassment. Like that's just pathetic.
Yes, sorry to ramble so much. We're going to continue, but I must say this is it's a big deal to us because we know how important it is for parents, specifically mothers, but also fathers to have that first period of time without having to stress about going to work and being able to spend that time with your child. That is a very important thing, not only for the parents, but for the child's development as well. And so, yeah, that's crazy. All right.
To be fair, 9 states and Washington, D.C. have passed their own paid leave laws since 2002. But federally,
And then I can be very brief with the United States. We have nothing.
you've probably heard this before. There's no end to coverage on the subject.
Just us and Papua New Guinea.
If you don't know, as of right now, the United States is only one of 5 countries without guaranteed paid family leave.
88% of working mothers will not get 1 minute of paid leave.
But why is it this way? The U.S. is just as wealthy and developed as these countries, and operates with similar governmental structures. So, what gives? Most countries have some combination of maternity leave, paternity leave, and parental leave, which is for either parent after individual leave ends. Provisions vary for LGBTQ and other non-traditional parents. Here's how it works in practice. Let's compare the US to none of these. It's a media favorite to compare social policies in the US to those of Nordic countries.
It is,
which
it's
are
true.
Extremely generous
I've heard that.
in comparison. But
Yeah,
they
I'm
have
so jealous
very
of their-
different social and economic structures from the US. Instead, let's compare to similar nations, the United Kingdom and Canada. A pregnant person in the UK can take 39 weeks with about 30% of their average weekly pay. A pregnant Canadian can take a total of 51 weeks at about 50% of their average wage.
Okay.
In each country, these payments are capped at a certain amount. Taxes cover the cost. Though UK employers pay up front, the government typically reimburses the vast majority. Finally, both people are entitled to return to their old jobs, or at least similar ones. Sounds pretty good.
One thing I'd like to ask if someone in the comments knows how this works. How does that affect the employer? Like, I'm sitting there thinking, not so much the larger corporations, but say your small mom and pop store who has, 5 or 10 employees, and all of a sudden if they're missing...
They're really going to miss that person. Like, their workload is going to fall behind.
Like, how does that get covered? Does the employer get some sort of benefit while that person's gone for possibly more than half the year?
No, it said in the UK that they get 30%.
39 weeks, 30%. 30% for 39 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I wonder how that works, because I can imagine, that... both you'd want the employer and the employee to not only be happy, but also be able to
make ends meet,
and everybody come out of it in a good position.
Yeah.
If anyone knows how that works, let us know in the comments. I'd be curious to know how that works on the employer end as well.
Not Finland or Sweden good, but good. But in the US,
And then I can be very brief with the United States. We have nothing.
the 1993 Family and Medical Leave Act entitles new parents to 12 weeks of job-protected leave
12 weeks
without pay. The bright side is that this act provides the same leave for a major illness or injury, or to care for a relative. That's the family and medical part. The downside is that the caveats of the bill mean it only covers about 56% of the workforce. Now, let's return to the why.
Countries in the industrial world, which was primarily North America and Europe, really began paying attention to this issue at all in the last third of the 19th century.
Nations needed women to both work and birth future workers, which gave women unprecedented bargaining power. Most European states passed some form of unpaid leave by the end of the 19th century. But in the US, the availability of cheap labor due to the echoes of slavery rendered female labor less necessary.
Slavery, of course, had been abolished, but sharecropping and other forms of more or less indentured labor kept a servile Black workforce in place.
Back in Europe, the movement for more maternity benefits got a major boost from World War I. To make a long story short, when millions of men went to fight in the trenches of World War I, millions of women staffed the jobs they left behind.
Oh my goodness.
Husky mademoiselles handle the wings like toys.
And when many of those men came back injured,
Nursing.
or not at all,
Yeah.
working women gained bargaining power.
Or, okay.
Europe was much more destroyed physically, that need for physical rebuilding and sort of this push for all hands on deck to rebuild. And so more women remained in the workforce, largely out of necessity.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Activists
That makes a lot of
lobbied for
sense.
12 weeks of paid leave, and while countries didn't immediately comply, the stage was set for future reforms, especially when World War II left Europe even more battered just a few decades later. But in the US, the lack of physical destruction and the comparably small number of deaths again rendered female labor a little less necessary.
In the United States, after World War II, the men came back, and the idea was largely, okay, thanks, women. We really appreciate what you did while we were gone, and now we're going to take our jobs back.
Now you may be asking yourself, what about Canada? It's not like the Axis forces stomped all over the Great White North, so
Yeah.
how'd they get paid leave? That difference largely comes down to the priorities of feminist movements. While Canadian feminists included paid leave in their activism, American feminists tended to prioritize other issues, like reproductive rights, workplace rights, and passing the Equal Rights Amendment. Between World War II and the late 1980s, most wealthy nations passed maternity leaves with job protection and pay. But the US lagged behind. Representative Patricia Schroeder of Colorado sponsored the first paid leave bill in 1984, but it languished under the Reagan administration. It was reintroduced twice and vetoed twice in the Bush years, despite enormous popularity among the public.
See,
That's
like,
ridiculous.
what annoys me about this, why is this even a partisan issue? Why,
Right.
like, this should just be an issue
Something that we all agree on.
we all agree on. It's one of those things that's, it's good for the people.
Well, everyone, yes.
And-
It's good
and-
for our society as
Yes.
a whole.
And you know what? Like, even if you don't look at it from like, oh, this is good for the parents, it's good for the children. It allows them to bond with their parents.
Which in turn makes our
Specifically the mother.
society a better place in
Right.
the long run.
Maybe that's why. But like, I just don't get it. Like,
Yeah.
it's just like, this should not be a partisan issue at all.
He didn't want to draw a lot of attention to the fact he was vetoing it. So he put out some written statements that just said, I'm a big fan of family leave. I think we should have family leave, but I don't think it's the government's place to do it.
Activists used this as a cudgel against Bush in the 1992 election, and Bill Clinton promised to pass it if he won. The Family and Medical Leave Act was the first major piece of legislation he signed on February 5, 1993. As much as this was a victory, it was only meant to be a first step. When asked about the FMLA in 2014, Representative Schroeder said,
It's still so watered down and everything else. That was 20 some odd years ago. What have you done since? Could you please beef it up? I don't think there's a capital in the world that talks more about family values and does less.
some progress has been made. The Trump administration passed 12 weeks of paid parental leave for federal employees in 2019. Additionally, as of 2020, 21% of the workforce had access to paid family leave through their employers. But the biggest moves came from individual states, starting with California, which passed the first paid leave law in 2002.
They claim it would be a job killer. They claim it will be abused, that Aunt Mary will have a hangnail and somebody will want to take off from work to take care of her.
This is Eileen Applebaum. She studied the effects of California's law and found that 91% of businesses reported either no effect or a positive effect on profitability.
It did not reduce productivity. It did not reduce profitability. It increased morale. It reduced turnover.
Why this works is pretty simple. Firstly, it's funded through a small tax amounting to about 1% of a worker's first $118,000 in earnings.
And because it's spread out over the entire workforce, and because workers do not take advantage of it, the expenses are quite low.
Secondly, it reduces turnover, which is one of the most expensive parts of running a business.
Yeah,
I remember
can see that.
talking to a top...
Yeah, I mean, like, if you can have a baby and you can leave for 3, 4, 5 months or something like that, and maybe get at least partial of your pay, and know that you can go back to the job. Not only, especially if this is actually, since this isn't federally mandated, if your employer actually agrees to do it, even though it's not mandated, you're going to be very appreciative of that.
Yeah, for sure.
And so you got to imagine,
loyal to that company.
that's what I was about to get at. You'd be much more loyal to that company.
I don't know how I feel about whether it should be federally regulated or left up to the states.
Yes.
I can kind of see that argument.
Whether the federal government's going to do something with this or not, why not go ahead as
Right,
a
it's not
state?
like the state can't.
Right.
So
all these states that are just choosing not to for whatever reason, why not? This shouldn't be a partisan issue. This should literally be one of those issues that's so simple. There is very little, maybe nothing, that is truly more important to a society being successful than a strong family unit. And honestly, I believe that is one of the biggest faults we have in modern society. I'll say in the United States, but I'm sure in a lot of other countries as well, that the family has dissolved over time. Like, everybody used to sit down for dinner every night at the table and talk about the day, and the parents were connected to their kids, and the kids were connected to their parents every day. And you see more and more and more that's not happening. And this is just one little piece of legislation that could be passed on a state-by-state level here in the U.S. that would actually bring a little bit of that connection from an early age back. And you can grow from that initial connection. Yeah. I mean, I can see... we're going to finish this, but I just got this in my head that I have witnessed. I mean, I've experienced myself being able to connect with my daughter for so long early on, how great that was for us. But I've witnessed it specifically, being able to see it with Lindsay and Sophia, and the closeness of these two. I can't imagine they would be as close today if that bond hadn't been able to be developed day after day after day, nonstop for those months and months early on.
Yeah.
And it's just a shame that it's not prioritized more in the United States. And it's one of the most simple things that could happen for a big change. Anyway, let's continue.
Executive at a California IT company. And he said to us, well, I've been in many, many meetings, and I have never heard anyone say, well, if it wasn't for paid family and medical leave in California, our share price would be through the roof.
Since California, 8 more states and DC have passed their own paid leave laws. And in March, over 250 companies sent a joint letter to Congress requesting paid leave at the federal level. With 82% of Americans in favor of paid leave, is it just a matter of time?
Your ability to take a paid leave should not depend on what state you're working in or on what we call the boss lottery. I welcome every big company with deep pockets that provides these benefits to its workers. But I don't really think we can require businesses to provide these benefits. They're expensive if you do it one business at a time. They're cheap if you do it for the workforce of an entire state or an entire country.
Wow. Guys, this was really eye-opening, to say the least.
Wow.
This is shocking that 82% of people are for this.
Yeah.
Yet we don't have this.
Right. I do agree with the lady at the end who said we shouldn't force companies to do this. I think it should be incentivized and left up to the company. And if they choose not to do it, then obviously going in, you know that, and you don't have to work for a company that chooses not to. But I think it should be more incentivized and pushed for them to want to.
Maybe companies that actually provide this get some sort of special tax break or something. But I like the idea of just, large companies and states specifically picking up this and running with it.
Yeah.
If the federal government's not going to go after this, why not? I mean, if you literally know that 82% of the people nationwide like the idea of this, then that tells me that it doesn't really matter what the political leanings of any state are, you're going to have a majority. If 82% nationally, you know you're going to have at least over 50% in every state that is for this.
My question is, why do the others not want to?
Well,
is it the people who own the businesses and they don't want to be forced to?
I think it's because we don't really know how this would work in the U.S. We haven't really, it's something we really haven't really dived in, at least most of us. I mean, myself included. I can imagine how maybe it would work. But like I asked earlier, like, how exactly does this work for the employer? Because some people don't want to ever think about the employer. Oh, who cares about the employer? Right. But you have to, especially when it comes to, maybe you can think that for the large corporations, but when it comes to the smaller employers that are maybe 10 people, if they literally are going to lose one or maybe two of their employees at one time, how exactly are they being compensated for this, and how do they make it work to not only why the people are gone, but also when they come back, be able to have that job available for them? Temp workers is how I figure that might work. And like, if you're paying 30% or something, then maybe that 70% can be used for the temp worker. But guys, I really don't know. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Maybe if you are in a country such as the UK, for example, or Canada or others, anyone watching this, if you live in a country that is, I guess, outside America, how exactly does it work? How do the employers, how are they able to provide this
and not go under for smaller businesses and companies?
Yeah, that's the ticket. You know, the big corporations, you know, the Googles of the world, they can obviously handle it. But the small company with 5 or 10 people, like, how does that work for them? They must get some sort of tax break, or they must, since they've only got to pay out a certain percentage, then they hire a temp worker. But I think that is what's going on in the U.S. in a lot of cases. The people who don't want it is because they sit there and they think, well, you know, like this small company of 10 people, like, how in the world are they supposed to pay someone's salary when the person's not there, and then they also have the added workload? How does that work? And so if those questions can be answered, maybe there could be some ability to see more of this happen in the U.S. if we could just sit down and answer these questions. Yeah. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments, guys.
I feel like I'm going to be so jealous reading the comments.
But guys, thank you so much for stopping by. Please click that like button. Feel free to drop your comments or suggestions about this video or others. And don't forget to subscribe to continue to follow us on our journey to discover anything and everything about the UK and Ireland. Until next time, guys. Peace.
Bye.